Bob.
All right, we are live. You are listening to I Want to Believe Radio. Yes, the one and only show which features the antics of Elmer Boster and
Yes,
Dan
and
Big Dog Holroyd. Woof, woof. What's that, Elmer?
I was going to tell you that he's pointing at you, so you're live, so you have to go forward.
I thought I was going to put my arms up and be like, what are you pointing at
Don't
me
do
for?
that. Don't do that. Don't do that. We can spell that. We can spell that. We don't need that.
All right, man. Well, anyways, you are, like I said, you are listening to I Want to Believe Radio. You could be watching us, listening to us live, or you will hear us played on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Unrestricted Radio Network. And
Correct.
The website for that is www.unrestrictedradio.com. And you can also go to our webpage, which is the Michigan 69 podcast.com. The Michigan 69 Podcast Radio Network.
Wow, so, you did it this time. You did it. You went through it. You got it.
That's the hardest part, man. The hardest part
he did it.
All that,
it is. There's a list. There's a list. I mean, we, like I said, the Unrestricted Radio Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I was telling Bob off line here before we started that. Telling them off.
Tell Bob off at least once a week. So
we all have to. You got to keep it in check.
Yeah, absolutely.
But last listenership hit about 1,000. Because this goes out all over the place.
Yep.
I want to thank our sponsors before we get started real quick. We'd never want to be remiss and thank our sponsors, Henderson Castle at hendersоncastle.com, Gun Barrel Coffee at gunbarrelcoffee.com. I do have bags of coffee on its way to Bob. Elmer, I got to get an address for you so I can send you some, and I have some already on the way to Dr. Michael Lynch.
Also, I see how it is. Lynch gets it, but not me. Okay, I see.
Well, I don't have your address yet.
You didn't ask. You did not ask.
Also, Southern Michigan Paranormal Night Stalkers, Live Radio 1 on Facebook, and as Bob already said, the Michigan 69 Podcast Network. Bob, go ahead. I'll shut my mouth.
First of all, I was going to say, Dan, because we were kind of toying with different podcasting networks. We're like, we'll just do the Michigan Podcast Network. But then there's already a Michigan Podcast Network. So then Dan threw in the 69. And what's significant about that number, Dan?
It's a family-friendly show. So there was kind of that little mindset joke there that I thought only a few of us would get it.
I got a question.
Oh, Elmer.
Is it about pirates?
No, absolutely not. No.
I feel like it is. I feel like it's about pirates.
I passed those pirates on their little pirate island. They're all by themselves.
I bet you did.
But part of it was too. I had some weird thing where I thought too for a moment like. Maybe the goal would be that we try to get at least 69 different types of podcasts on the network.
There you go. Yeah.
And so that also is part of the formula, but there is kind of an inside joke, tongue in cheek, if you will.
I bet it is.
Sometimes a lot of tongue and a lot of cheek.
A lot of tongue and a lot of cheek, yes.
So anyways, folks, we have a great show lined up for you this evening. We have a great friend of the show, Mr. Andrew Smith. He is the basically head of the Braxton County Visitor Bureau Center there in Braxton County, West Virginia, and he is also in charge of the Flatwoods Monster Museum. So we'd like to welcome our guest to the show, and he's also a hell of a guitar player. Come on, let's welcome Andrew. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh man, it's a blast, and the last time we had you on, we had so much fun, and there's, we just didn't have enough time. So this is kind of nice because we can kind of pick up where we left off. And, since you've been on the show, and it's been a few years now, but you guys are really booming with the Flatwoods Monster. Before the show, Dan was talking about some of the television shows, like on the History Channel, Project Blue Book, which kind of shed a spotlight on the Flatwoods incident. And then Seth Breedlove's Small Town Monsters, they did a documentary as well. And it seems like it's been blowing up. And I know the fan base is just growing and growing all over the world. I mean, you got fans over in Japan, China, I mean, all over. So if you want to just, first of all, talk about this resurgence. I mean, what's going on with this?
Yeah, we're going to have new listeners.
This
So I
mania.
know we're asking to relive this whole historic thing again from
Well,
kind of from there to here, but I think we have to because we've
It's
got new
okay.
people that are not going to know what this is.
It's okay,
Okay.
Andrew. If you need a safe place,
Yes.
I will
We
come
are
up
your
there
support system.
and drive 2 hours just to hold you and tell you it's going to be okay. All right.
Because it certainly isn't here, that's for sure.
No, it's not a safe place there. That's where bad things happen.
Where you're talking about resurgence in interest, you could almost it's kind of a joke, but you could almost chalk it up to Mothman fans needing something new to sink their teeth in. So
Right.
Could be that, or like you were saying, just all these different things that are spotlighting the Flatwoods Monster, and they were kind of all happening like within the same year.
Right.
And so it kind of didn't have any choice in the matter. And I was just lucky enough to be in the wake of all that. So,
Yeah, you kind of took the reins. Absolutely.
yeah, just good timing as far as that. And it was all accidental, at least on my part. But yeah, it's been great. Now that network you guys were talking about, what's the name of that network again?
It's the website is www.themichigan69podcast.com.
So
The
network.
So the Michigan 420 that was already taken.
Yeah.
That's my boy right there.
And that's my son's birthday. That's it's coming up here, and it's a significant number. But that would be another good number.
You notice how Bob's like, "Oh yeah, that's my son's birthday."
That's my son's birthday, 420.
No wonder you guys are seeing monsters. Yeah.
Right.
Well, you guys can use that if at some point one of you gets mad, at the rest of you can form your own and you can use that one.
Already copyrighted. Already
we'll have
copyrighted.
to say, yeah, but we're looking at like 420 podcast shows.
Ambitious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we want to say. With Cheech and Chong invited to it too.
Either that or it's going to be one stinky network. You got your choice. There you go.
I wonder if Kevin Smith would be involved in that. I mean, I'm just wondering.
Well, he's got his Smodcast thing going on, so.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm not a big Smith fan. We'll just leave that where
come
it is.
on, I love Kevin Smith. Damn. Oh man.
So were you guys wanting me to dive into the Flatwoods Monster story to bring your new listeners up to speed?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Let's kind of give a brief synopsis about what happened that September night.
Okay.
And if you
A
could just
dark,
kinda,
September night. It wasn't raining. Yeah.
No, but if you
I don't
kind
know.
of just set the atmosphere, and what I want to say to the listeners who are listening on Sunday night on the Unrestricted Radio Network, just dim those lights, light those candles, and just get in the mood, man, because we're gonna put you back into West Virginia, back in it was 1958.
52.
52.
Oh man, I knew. We're gonna take you back to that September evening in 1950.
Just give us your paranormal card, Bob. Hand it over right now.
And the man card. And the man card too. We're just gonna revoke everything.
Well,
Homer's got a shirt on. Oh my gosh, did you notice that?
I noticed it.
Gotta represent. Gotta
He
represent.
is representing. All right, I'm sorry, Andrew. All right.
No, you're good. So this was September 12th, 1952, in the little town of Flatwoods. There was a group of boys playing on the field beside of the Flatwoods Elementary School, and it was about 7 o'clock or so. So as they're playing, probably getting wrapped up with playing, they noticed this bright light streak across the sky. And it seemed to land on a nearby hilltop. So several of the boys decided they would go see if they could figure out what it was that seemed to land nearby. And on their way to this hill, they actually had to pass two of the boys who were brothers, Eddie and Fred May. They were passing their home, and their mother was home, Kathleen. So they ran in there and told them what they'd seen, and told them that they were going to go up just up the hill to this little flat that was part of the Bailey Fisher farm. So she thought she better join them, and she also conscripted a cousin of hers who was nearby at a nearby home named Jean Lemon, who was a Army National Guardsman. So this group of about 7, I want to say off the top of my head, they headed up this hill, and it's getting increasingly more dark, especially as they're walking through these narrow paths through the woods with the canopy overhead. And as they start going up this path, they notice a pulsating red light at the top of the hill. So as they're fixated on that, they are assuming this is what they saw come through the sky. But at the same time that they notice that the air around them kind of gets filled with this sort of noxious fumes. They're not necessarily fumes, but a noxious smell at least fills the air around them, and it's unpleasant. It burns their eyes and throat a little bit, irritates them, and shortly after that, they notice movement coming from their left in the nearby hills or the nearby woods. So they turn their flashlight toward it, and in the woods, gliding apparently toward them, is this 10-foot tall figure with a big red face or head, and this shape behind it that's shaped like an ace of spades, and then a long metallic looking, possibly green body coming down, and at the bottom ending in something that appeared to look like drape-like folds. And of course, immediately they're struck with fear, drop their flashlight, turn and run back down the hill, hopping fences all the way. And when they get to their home, they call the local emergency number, which is picked up actually at the, this is a detail a lot of folks don't know, at the Braxton County Jail. There wasn't really a 911 call center at the time.
Right.
So the jailer or someone from his family would answer emergency calls and then relate those to the county sheriff or deputy. And they were already out on a call at the time. So by the time they got there, it was already completely dark. They investigated the hill, and the light that the family and kids said they saw was gone. The figure that was in the woods, seemingly charging toward this group of witnesses, were both gone. The only thing remaining was the smell still lingered in the air, not so much that it really caused them trouble or anything, but they could smell it. And it just so happened that Ailey Stewart, the owner of the local paper, was good friends with Kathleen May. So she also called him after calling the sheriff and the sheriff's deputy. So he arrived on the scene about the same time as the sheriff's deputy did, which caused the story to be written rather quickly and published. It hit the AP and was national and international news within days. Actually, relatively recently, I received a scan from a Swedish newspaper where the AP story was translated and printed on September 15th, just 3 days after the sighting took place. It was already international news in 1952.
Wow. That's great. Wow, that's crazy.
So that's the nuts and bolts of the story.
I came across an interview, which I was going to bring up, again, years back when we had you on the first time. We talked about, some people who've done like little mini documentaries and did tours and whatnot when I think the tree was still there. What I'm talking about is a gentleman who was one of the reporters for, I'm having a brain fart too, Bob. You're not the only one tonight. Wasn't it something, a big, huge, giant paranormal UFO magazine isn't it still in print?
Fate,
you know who I'm talking about?
Fate
magazine, yeah.
Fate magazine. Thank you, Andrew. Yes.
Yeah.
And that gentleman who was the main reporter did this great, sitting down, did a great interview because he was saying that he was one of the first and few people taking it serious, with Fate magazine to come up there and speak with the family. And how did that sit with the boys? Do you know much about that and how that went down, or is it?
I don't really even know if they would have known too much about that Fate article, but that would have came out. That was always a quarterly magazine, and I think that would have came out in January 1953. But that was
Right.
written by a gentleman by the name of Gray Barker, and at the
There you go.
time he
Yes.
was living in Clarksburg, West
Yep.
Virginia, but
Yep.
he was actually from Braxton County originally.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's from a little town called Riffle. That's almost not even really there anymore. That's not true. It is. But if you're driving down the main 2-lane and you blink, before you know it, you're in Gilmer County,
Yeah.
which is a neighboring county to Braxton. But yeah, that was one of the first fairly conclusive stories ever written about it. And he went on to write an even more detailed account in his book, They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, that was published not too long after that.
Right. I always thought that was really a great interview, that he gave, and he puts a lot of the detail in that you talk about. Again, I really applaud you. You're really on top of obviously the information, but like you said, I think he was a little aggrieved too, because he was really trying to bring more attention to this with military and a few other people who were just naysaying this, and they were just playing it off at first, but yet. I'll let you tell the rest of the story, obviously, because you're the guest tonight. But I mean, other things went on that makes you kind of go, huh? If nothing really took place and you guys didn't really believe the story, then what's all the rigmarole that goes on behind the scene of other things? You know what I mean? Not telling the truth.
Yeah, and I don't know the timeline perfectly. And to be honest with you, I don't know that anybody does, because
it's all over the place.
Yeah, folks do their best to remember, and then it gets reported, that sort of thing. But not too long after the sighting took place, the way I understand it, within days, there was a group of folks from the Army dispatched to come in and investigate the land where the sighting took place, and if they were to find any evidence at all, to send it back to the Pentagon ASAP. And of course, whether or not anything was found, it's not like they were reporting that or anything like that. So that would, again, be a question mark of whether or not anything was found, and if so, what was done with it.
So, Andrew, during this time period, were there any reported Men in Black sightings, such as, similar to the Mothman incident?
The only such case that I know of, I don't even know if you could classify it as Men in Black, but it would have been really early on, as a matter of fact, that term hadn't even been coined till much later. But I know that Kathleen May had been visited in person, received telephone calls and letters from folks that more or less gave the impression as if they had some sort of authority, but I don't believe ever cited any sort of, like official position that they held or official organization, but more or less to tell her to, let's stop talking about it. I don't think there was any sort of outright intimidation or anything like that, but she felt like the message definitely was, why don't you be quiet about this?
Right. Now, how did the community as a whole, how did they treat the witnesses, after this incident?
Well, Kathleen May was actually really well known in the area. She was actually a beautician and had a beauty parlor in town. So, she knew on a first name basis with, a lot of folks in the community. So pretty much everybody that knew her well or had a personal relationship with her, I think at the very least gave them enough leeway to say, well, I know them. They're pretty honest. If they say they saw something, I believe them. But then, of course, you always have, folks that for some reason or another maybe have something against them, or maybe don't know them all that well, and they don't like the idea of something like this happening in their backyard.
Right.
It's easier to dismiss a witness than it is to possibly accept something this, fantastic happening right in their backyard.
Right.
So I think there was a little bit of both.
Now, and the thing is, there was such a number of witnesses too, and the one cousin who had a military background was in the National Guards. So, I mean, it seems like the reporting was pretty credible. Do you know, did they all share the same story when they were separated and interviewed? Are you familiar with any of that at all, or?
I think as far as I know, they shared enough of the details to where
Right.
any variances you could pretty well chalk up to just the tolerances involved with just being a human being,
Right.
to where maybe if somebody said, oh, it's 10 feet tall, or somebody said
Right,
12
right.
feet tall, things like that, or maybe slight differences in shape, size, color.
Sure.
But a really interesting thing that I've always liked to look at is there are 3 separate drawings that I have that they were asked, at least the three different kids, and I want to say it was Freddie, May, Ed, May, and their friend Neil Nunley. So they would have been the 3 oldest boys involved. So I believe they were asked to do the sketches separately of what they thought they saw.
Right.
And granted, they don't look perfect as far as matching, and none of them are artists by any means, but they all pretty much drew the same thing.
Right.
And, I would imagine it would be a pretty wild thing for they all to guess right or come up with hey, let's have it look like this. And one of them drew like the head, like 3 of them drew the head pretty much cylindrical.
Right.
And one of them drew the head in a cylindrical shape, but it almost had like a fuzziness around it.
Like an aura type thing around. Sure.
Yeah. To where it's almost like it was like different enough to seem like you could take into account different people's perspective and
Right.
remembrance of it, yet different enough that it would seem unlikely that folks would come up with a plan and say, hey, this is what it looked like.
Right.
I would think it would be a little bit more similar. But that's just all my own conjecture.
Right. Sure. Now you actually had the, you were able to talk to Freddie, correct? Is that, or do an interview with Freddie in the last few years, or?
Well, I didn't interview Freddie. I know Freddie pretty well, and I've talked to him.
He's a neighbor, right? Or was a neighbor to you, or lives close to you, or?
Well, I won't go that far. In case I won't disclose where he lives. I won't disclose where I live.
Right. No, I don't blame you.
But yeah, I know him well.
Right.
But I've never interviewed him necessarily. I've just talked to him. Now he was interviewed for Small Town Monsters, their documentary.
Right.
So as far as I know, that's the latest interview that he's done, but maybe also one of the very few that he's done since, way back when. There may have been a few sort of, more low key ones between then and like Frank Ficino's book that I believe came out in the year 2000.
Right.
But not much, like as far as so he didn't really like taking interviews. Right. And Seth Breedlove of Small Town Monsters actually kind of had to, sweet talk him a little bit, right. Not sweet talk him, but had to get to know him. And,
sure.
And, he had to be
a little bit.
Yeah. And he had to be comfortable with him because he really wasn't comfortable doing any interviews.
Well, I'm sure it's something that was so disturbing. I mean, he probably really doesn't want to talk about it, or he's afraid of, what people would think, I mean, I can't imagine, but now most of the witnesses, they've continued to live there throughout their whole life. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, actually, a detail that I just recently learned is that, Kathleen May, she lived here in this area up until she passed away when she was 90. And I actually just learned the other day that she was a smoker her whole life and somehow made it to 90.
Wow,
but yeah,
she
but
didn't inhale though, I bet.
Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe nobody ever taught her, so it didn't ever affect her any. I don't know. But Freddie, he just turned 80,
Wow.
and his brother's still alive too. And I believe his brother is 2 years older than he is.
Wow.
So at least I know that, they're still around. I know that Neil Nunley passed away.
Mhm.
I don't know exactly when, but I know he did. And there was a couple other boys in that group, and I don't really know anything that's happened to them. There's a relative of one of them that still lives in the area that the last time I saw and talked to was a couple years ago, and at that time his brother was in poor health. That's what it was. I know his brother a little bit, and he still lives in the area.
Okay.
But I don't know what his condition is. It's kind of funny that kind of makes me think. People, and you all kind of did this when you introduced me, like to think of me as like the expert of this monster. It's what's funny is I've never tried to be. I just live here and know everybody. So
you're the nominated expert.
It's just made it easy,
Right. I understand that, Andrew. I get the same thing for the castle. Everybody's like, well, Dan knows everything there is about Henderson Castle. And honestly, it's just from working it and doing paranormal and research. There are people who have been in and out of that longer than me, and you, I just happen to live in the area. I grew up next to the damn thing, so I got all the info.
The real reason why everybody knows that you know about the castle is because the bells.
The bells. The bells.
Is there an authoritarian or somebody that I guess is really investigated this case, Andrew? Do you know? Is there anybody that has made it like their life, ambition to investigate the Flatwoods?
Yeah, he's on with us right now.
Well, I mean, besides Andrew,
right?
And he,
come on, the dude has like all these documentation.
He's got drawings
but
from the
is there a guy we could talk to?
Andrew, no, I don't mean it that way. I mean, Andrew
he's wanting us to take that paranormal part away from him tonight. I don't know what
I can hop off here if you want me to.
No, not at all.
Andrew, go grab a hat. Andrew, go grab a hat and just like get back on there and be like, yeah, I'm that guy.
Well, I know you're that guy, but I mean, do you know? Is there a researcher or anybody that has spent their life, working on this case?
Well, I don't know about their life, but I don't think that there's anybody that spent more time devoted to it than probably Frank Ficino. He connected a lot of dots for his, the book that he wrote.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who might say maybe he connected some dots that didn't need to be connected, but I don't know that. And then at the same time, it makes at least for a compelling and read. And I'll tell you too that Freddie May, he pretty much signs off on everything that Ficino's put out there, at least as far as where he and his family and friends were involved. So that's good enough for me. Right. But probably Frank would be up there, and then if not Frank, probably at one time, probably Gray Barker would have been the authority because he did so much of the early investigation. Now, of course, he passed away in the 80s. But yeah, at one time it would have been Gray.
But isn't it with Frank's information that I think Gray, I'm trying to remember the interview and some other things from those gentlemen from Fate magazine. I thought there were two of them, but they made a connection early on, which I think Frank did too. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you know the information or not, that I asked you, I think when we had you on before, about them connecting other UFO sightings that were going on very close to the time that this took place, and nobody was really kind of connecting the dots. And if, like I said, I think Frank talked about that and had tried to put that together a little bit about, well, isn't that funny how there were similar things being seen and spotted as far as what the boys saw at first, and nobody ever gave it any kind of credence, and now it's kind of part of the lore. Am I wrong there?
No, you're not wrong. I think that Gray did connect a lot of dots there, and I'm pretty sure in his book, they knew too much about flying saucers. He definitely has a thread that runs through a lot of those different accounts. But Frank Ficino, in his book, he talks about things that were happening all over the U.S. basically in a pretty short time frame.
Right.
And if you, at least in his investigation and in his conclusions, I haven't necessarily came to these conclusions because really I haven't really soaked in all the details of all of the nationwide things that were happening at that time. But he's came to conclusions of you could almost pinpoint flight paths, going from like one side of the coast and inland and that sort of thing. So yeah, for sure. Frank did that. And whenever you were talking about two writers, I wonder if I know that Gray worked a lot with Ivan T. Sanderson as well. So I wonder if that is somebody.
That's who it is. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Having a brain fart. That's exactly who it was. Yeah.
Hey, Elmer, has,
you know what, guy? Hold on 1 second. I think I'm going to go get the guy you're all wanting to talk to. I'll be right back, all right? All right. Just give me about 5 minutes, all right? Just 5 minutes.
All right. So while Elmer is gone, why don't we just take a break?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Take station identification.
Everybody has seen the train wreck. They've seen all the burning and the crashing. And we'll take a break. And let's take a break, as you said, Bob, and I'll let you lead it out. This is your show. I'm the loudmouth on it.
No, this is your show too, man. No, we are talking with our guest, Andrew Smith, and we're talking about the Flatwoods Monster in specific. You are listening to I Want to Believe Radio, and we will be back. That was perfect.
All right.
Okay.
And we are back.
And we are back. You're listening to I Want to Believe Radio, and Elmer is back as well with his little buddy. Elmer, you want to tell us about your little buddy, the expert?
My name's Brexy, and Bob, you're dum-dum.
Elmer has got his buddy Braxy there.
Whatever hopes we had for this network going to certain levels, we have made sure, as always, that it stays right here where it needs to be.
Man, that's right.
We, if there's one thing you need to do is make sure you keep yourself humble, and we are experts at that.
That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do.
Hey,
Good Lord, I want one of those so bad. I really do. I'm gonna.
Bob. Question, Bob.
Yes, Braxton.
What does that gas smell like?
What does the what smell like?
You know the gas.
The gas?
What does the gas smell like?
The gas smells like, I don't know, rotten eggs.
No, it smells like my butt.
Which smells like rotten eggs.
No, it don't. That's rude.
Oh,
Why you
Lord.
gotta be rude like that? I'm out. I'm pissed. I'm out.
All right, peace out, man.
So, I got a PSA now that we're back from a commercial. Kids, don't do drugs, okay? Just don't
Then you end up like Elmer.
do any drugs.
Oh.
If you want any proof.
Is it crazy, Andrew, that this guy here lives in West Virginia with you? Isn't that crazy?
No.
He doesn't want to claim it at this point. He's like, oh no, I've moved. I'm not anywhere near.
No, I was saying the opposite. I'm saying he fits right in.
Oh well.
That's the sad part. That's really
Oh Lord.
That's really a sad part, I do got to say this much. I mean, if anybody who hasn't been near Sutton, Flatwoods, up in that area, it is a whole different world.
Yeah, explain
right?
the region. Explain it, because I know.
All right. So I would
beauty
give
or
you
what?
like I will give you my point of view from where I drive on the road a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I had to go to Clarksburg to work one morning, and it was like in December, and I had to leave at like 3 a.m. to go up there, right? And nature called, and I was already on 79 right before Sutton. All right, peaceful. It's like 5 a.m. So I'm standing outside, and I'm looking around, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, there is a reason why there's UFO sightings out here. There's like nothing. I mean, I swear to God, it was like pure open sky. I was just like, this is where I get abducted at. There was deer in the middle of the highway throwing up gang signs I didn't know existed. Okay. And honest to God though, I love the people of Flatwoods. I love the people in Sutton. I mean, they're just so down to earth people. Like,
well, if they're anything like Andrew, man, I mean, yeah. I mean, that's.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Andrew's like awesome. I mean, but he don't need to know that. All right, he doesn't need to know. Oh crap, he's on here, ain't he? Crap.
Oh, his head's getting big, man.
Yeah, I know it. But I mean,
I just love the whole. Yeah, I just love the
Yeah.
whole deer flashing gang signs. It's like what the
Only
John
West
Deere
Virginia.
Kings. What was it? The
no, it's the Rudolph Reds. You know.
Rudolph Reds.
Rudolph Reds.
Oh, God.
No, but
That
I
is
mean,
funny.
if anybody takes
That
a
is
trip
funny.
up to Sutton, I mean, to the Flatwoods Museum, it is so cool. Like, I mean, honest to God, like I walked up in there and I was just like, I was in love. Like, so many documentations of this stuff, and I mean, Andrew knows this stuff inside and out. But I've got one question from the last interview. Let's see if you found out anything.
Oh gosh.
All right, UFO hunters. You
Uh-huh.
remember we talked about that?
Vaguely.
About whenever they went out to the farm, which nobody can ever go on because we'll probably get shot. But
Right.
but remember whenever I was telling you about they went out there and they was actually looking and picked up radiation on a Geiger meter. And you know, I still need to actually find that episode for you. You need to remind me like this weekend, and I'll try to find it for you.
Was that one where they were they really focusing on the reptilian side of it? Was that it?
I don't think so on that. These guys were pretty
Okay.
like point blank. It was on the History Channel. It's like early 2000s. Not
Well,
very many people.
That's what I think I'm remember, but I could be wrong. Was was Stanton Friedman involved?
No. See, Stan Friedman
Okay.
always talked about he thought it was a bodysuit, kind of like
Right.
an exoskeleton.
Mhm.
And I thought that was pretty neat. I remember
Yeah.
whenever we had Stan on, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
You know, whenever we had him on the show, I actually asked him about the Flatwoods Monster because, you know, obviously, I had to throw a curveball at him. You know, I'm a West Virginia boy. You know what I mean?
Is that still available? Can I go back and listen to that? I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got it on archive on one of my computers, so I can definitely get that for you.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
that's cool. Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Yep,
I've
absolutely.
seen him. I've seen him outside of that, guys. I think. Well, you know, on your guys' podcast back in the day, but I'm pretty sure I've seen him on a YouTube or something discussing Flatwoods, and he made a few comments, and I said, I wonder if Andrew was aware, because I remember Elmer asking you that, and I think you were like, yeah, I don't think I've ever heard him do an interview, but I'm pretty sure he did. Somewhere else too, like somebody just out of the blue threw it at him, and he kind of went to town with it for about 5 minutes.
Well, the
But
thing is about Stan that most people don't realize is he actually knows a good bit about, you know, West Virginia and the UFO incidences because he actually was, I don't know if Andrew remembers, but in Charleston, they used to have like a UFO convention, like back in the early 2000s when Mothman was kind of in its infancy. Or larva state. Sorry, I had to go there. But anyway,
that is funny.
Yeah,
Larva
man,
state.
I see you all just dying over there. All right. Well, maybe go get Braxy because he's already cussing y'all. Like, you dumb. You know, you need to quit that. I can't even. I can't. You know, you kiss your mama with that mouth. Okay,
Don't
sorry.
Braxy to settle down. Come on.
Well,
But,
the thing of it is that I mean, even according to Philip Mantle, we've had Philip Mantle on the show. Phil said the same thing about Stan. It's like he knew like freaking everything. Anytime he went on his show, and he wouldn't even have to rifle through notes. Well, you know, you guys interviewed him. He just
yeah,
he was
like
all
whenever
he had a
whenever we
memory
had.
like-
Hey Bob, you remember when we had him on the show? How like I just went after him full throttle. Like it was I did not even play with him. Like normally, how I'm joking around and stuff. Not with him.
Elmer
Like,
was like a kid in the candy store, man.
yeah,
Well,
it was awesome.
how much of some of the add-on stuff can you relate to? Because we asked you about that before too. I'd like to have you cover that too, because there were things about the dog getting a whiff of the gas, and there were, one of the boys becoming very ill, the National Guardsman person.
Right.
I mean, how much is that rung out to be true, or does Freddie talk about that, or is that all made up stuff just for hype?
it's not made up, but I think a thing that I've been noticing a lot when digging into this stuff, and it's actually something that's kind of forced me to question anything I ever hear if I don't experience it myself.
Right.
And that is that it's I think it's really easy to for somebody to retell a story or to tell a detail, and maybe they use the word that in their mind and in their understanding makes perfect sense, and then when somebody else hears it, all of a sudden it means something else. Or in the way, this is the way that I understand it, though, relating to those specific events, details that you're talking about, is I don't know how it started, and I want to believe it wasn't started as a lie. I want to believe somebody said something about it, and somehow it just took root. And that is, about the dog dying. According to Freddie, the dog that went up with him, and a dog did go up with him, was their family dog. And the dog was named Ricky. I mean, he even told me the name. And the dog came up with him, did go out way ahead of them, did make noises as if it was in some kind of distress or worried or scared or something along that nature, and ran back down and ran past them and ran back down to their home. At least one could assume, at least out of that area anyway. But that was their family dog, and it lived to a regular age as far as Freddie's concerned. So whenever Freddie talks about it, he chalks it up to people trying to sell more newspapers.
Sure.
But again, I don't necessarily give it that sort of intent. It just seems like a thing where maybe somebody during an interview says something about, oh yeah, dog went up there and turned back around and ran away, scared to death. And then maybe somebody hears that and goes, oh, it died. So that I think I could chalk it up to that. And then talking about Gene Lemon, he would have been the person closest to where they actually saw, the creature.
He had the flashlight, isn't he? He's the one that had the flashlight.
Right. Yeah, he was leading the group. So as far as exposure, he would have had the most exposure. And I do believe, I know that it was reported that his mother reported that he was ill for the next several days, with like nausea and upset stomach and that sort of thing. But how severe it was, I mean, I don't think, the way that I understand, I don't think he was on death's door or anything like that, but that he left a healthy man and came back sick.
Right.
So that's the way I understand it.
I find it interesting, just because you could almost surmise too that, not to burst all the extraterrestrial stuff about it, because I think that's cool if that's what it was. And like Elmer said, Stan thought it might have been some sort of suit, or like a probe. Other people have said maybe this thing was a probe. Maybe it was something military that we put out there, because you'd almost understand if they're messing around with new type of propellants for any of these things they're launching and flying around. The boys breathe it in, and dog gets a little ill. Of course, Lemon gets ill. Kind of makes sense. Kind of makes sense to me that military, because they were doing a lot of things that we are finding out now even more, that they were aircraft tests, and all these people had these great UFO stories, and now all the bubbles are being burst on some of them, because they're now admitting this. But either way,
you're right. Either way, it's fascinating and frightening.
And frightening. I think I'd be frightened if I came across that, especially Elmer saying it's out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, hell,
68 years later, it's fascinating. Right. At the time, it's frightening. But yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. Freddie, even though he doesn't claim to know exactly what he saw, he can just tell you what he saw, but he can't tell you what it is or what it was. But I think that's where he's more or less settled on it. He thinks that he saw some sort of experimental something or another, and either it was an accident that just happened to fall in their lap, or that maybe it was intended to be some sort of almost like a psyops kind of thing, where let's just show somebody something scary and see how it
See how the
percolates.
pub.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a
So,
great point of view. Yeah, see how the public
yeah.
responds to it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. The only thing he will tell me though is he's like, well, if it was terrestrial in nature, whatever it was, I've never seen it again. So whatever it was, they've not put it into any sort of wide use or anything like that.
And see, that alludes to things too, because you think by now most of the stuff they've released of them trying out like probes and exosuits or anything, most of that stuff's out.
Right.
You know, we kind of know what it looks like, but I don't know. I wondered if anybody had ever looked at that design and have matched that up to anything Native Americans or any of these other cultures have done pictures of, or any kind of lithograph things of, because some of those look like spacesuits, and I wonder if there's anything out there that's close.
Well, I'll tell you something that's interesting. Now, I don't want to tell you how close because I'm not involved with the culture and I've not studied it extensively or anything like that.
Right.
But I will tell you, I had there was a local lady that had in the years past, she had several foreign exchange students, and they have the ones that she's had occasionally come back and visited her. And after we had established the museum, one that she had from Australia came back to visit her, and he was from Aboriginal descent, and he said that to him it bears a striking resemblance to, and he told me the name of it, but of course I can't remember it. I mean, is it another language? But there is some legend that the Aboriginals have, the Aborigines in Australia have, that are similar to it. And he brought up on his phone some Google images of some like rock paintings that are evidently prehistoric. And it shows, I mean, they're basic. I mean, they're not incredibly detailed or anything, but it shows like basically a basic humanoid form with this circle, like pointed circle over its head.
Oh yeah.
And the whole time while he was in the museum, he was kind of like freaked out because it bared enough resemblance to him, because he said something that like the elders would tell young people is like, if you go out in the woods at night, you know, the whatever he call it will get you, you know. So that's like, he felt like he was surrounded by this thing he grew up hearing about.
That's crazy.
And thought to him, he thought it could be exactly the same thing.
Right.
Could be.
But as far as matching up with anything Native American, I don't know. I've never seen anything like that.
Sure.
Well, I kind of said that. I kind of meant more of like the Aztec Maya, you know, some of the people that were doing some of these things, even in parts of the Middle East, where, again, you get looking at some of these drawings, and it looks like a guy in a suit, in some sort of astronaut suit. Which, if you're thinking it's extraterrestrial back then, it still could lend credence to the fact that even though they're far advanced in technology, maybe they still got to wear these environmental things to protect themselves, because obviously they don't breathe what we breathe, and things are just different here, if you're going to go in that direction, I guess.
You know, if you're a Doctor Who fan like Dan and I are, it almost looks like something a Time Lord would wear, right?
It does too, right? Right. Maybe one of the Time Lords visited.
You know what I'm kind of noticing? If
What's
you
that?
like if you have Dan just like stick his head just straight, if you notice the outline of his,
Oh
yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Man, yeah.
I mean, the point on the top of his head makes it perfect.
You're like that.
Exactly, perfect, right there. Braxton County is done. Next stop,
we got
Roswell.
It was me. It was me. I went back in time.
Yeah, went back in time. Got a hold of the sheep, and
I was looking for some good possum. I couldn't find any. That's where I went.
darn
Now-
woodland creatures.
Now to kind of go back and talk about health and radiation, you know, have there been any reports? I mean, I know the witnesses themselves have all lived healthy lives, long, healthy lives. Some are still alive. Have there been any reports around the time or any increased rates in, you know, like cancer cases or anything in the community that might be related to the radiation from this incident? Have you heard anything about that at all?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I feel like with the, I mean, even though it's not a big population,
Right.
I don't know if if there would even be enough, enough data to even draw a line through.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially from that time.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
But so not that I know of, but it's
Sure.
it's a possibility.
Right. Now, is the scorched tree, parts of that tree still there to this day? Is there?
Yeah. Well, it was 5 years ago.
Okay.
So that's all I know, and I'm
probably
not.
have people that try and go out and try to look for it and
Yes.
take
Yeah.
pieces of it. Sure.
So, and that's something now that I remember, and Dan mentioned it earlier. About the tree. I think I left that out of my story, but that was the way that the witnesses judged the height of this thing.
Sure.
There was a tall, wide, like a tall, thick oak tree that was growing on that property, and it had a real big, tall trunk, and where its first limb jutted out was roughly 10 feet, and that's
Right.
or maybe the limb was roughly 12 feet, and the monster's head was some distance below that. So that's where they were getting the height.
Okay.
So the funny thing about that tree is, now again, this could just be a coincidence, but that tree was the biggest, tree in that vicinity, because that was the one that caught their eye.
Right.
Yet, like right after the sighting took place, that tree died, and was just standing in place, dead. And if you do a Google image search of Frank Vicino, the writer we were talking about earlier,
right.
You'll probably find there's a picture that was taken whenever he was doing his research, where he was standing beside what was remained of the tree, and the tree goes so far up, and then it's where it's rotted and fell off.
Right.
But where that branch first sticks off, that's still there. So there's a picture that he took that shows the relative size. But the way it looks right now, or at least the last time I heard any reports or anything from it, is that the remainder of that stump, where it was basically like a log sticking up in the air, has fallen over, and it's just more or less rotting in place.
Right.
I'm really surprised. I mean, maybe thought for you, because I don't know how the people are that own the property, because I think you alluded to last time they weren't real happy about people trying to come up there and gain entry to take a look at the tree, but maybe get a portion of that stump and start selling pieces of the the Flatwood monster tree. Just
Yeah, and I've thought about that. I mean, I don't have no way of. I don't have a step number one on that, unfortunately.
Right.
But
right.
I have thought about that, and whenever I first thought of it, part of me was like, I don't know, selling off pieces of it. That feels kind of almost wrong in a way.
And it diminishes it. Yeah. Okay.
But then I reconsidered, and I thought, well, it's just sitting there rotting.
Yeah.
I mean, I would rather be preserved in some way, So.
Well, and the proceeds are going to the museum, so it's just you're still preserving the history of the thing, and people are getting a piece of the actual thing. I guess I can see where I can see your dilemma. I get it.
Well, I ended up settling one.
I got the perfect solution for this. I just bought a new chainsaw.
Oh,
You distract the owner. I'll go out there, and we'll get a couple big boys, because you know how it is. But we can take the chainsaw. We can go out there. We get the wood. We get the hell out of there. We might live. We might throw one of them big old boys at them. Let them trip. Might get shot. Hey, that's life.
There's nothing like admitting your plan out here on the internet.
Right.
They already know you're coming.
Right. or selling the evidence of that plan.
What you did illegally. Yeah.
Through it.
Yeah. So next time you see Elmer on the show, there's going to be bars somewhere in the background, I'm sure.
Not at work.
In an Orange County suit.
I mean, obviously this has left an everlasting legacy with internationally this account, the Flatwoods monster incident. What kind of legacy has it left there in Braxton County?
I think it's mostly positive. I think it's gotten to the point where, how we were talking earlier about, how the witnesses were treated or received, back at the time. And I would say it was probably almost a 50-50 split. Well, it's gotten to where now, I think, like I said, it's been 68 years. Enough time has passed that I think any sort of sting of either worrying about a stigma or worrying about something like this happening in your backyard has has softened enough to where as far as I can tell, and I don't know if this was ever possible, but in a day and age where it feels like you can't please anybody, it seems like the large majority of the folks that live in this area have embraced it and have grown to appreciate the story. They like that, that's something that's put them on the map, the international map. So it's almost kind of, in a way, it kind of almost doesn't matter what it is. I mean, as long as it was something. So, so they'll take it as far as I can tell.
Right.
That sounds similar to like places that have their own lake monsters. They do the same thing. They kind of resent it, and then they all grow in love with it. And now it's a thing. I mean, do you guys have any themed like restaurants or food or anything that's themed around that locally?
The way you guys are asking all these perfect questions, I feel like you guys have done some research. That or you're just really lucky.
Oh, man.
They're lucky. They're lucky. Don't let them buy into it.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a restaurant. It's kind of like a Dairy Queen style restaurant that's in downtown Flatwoods called The Spot. Now it's been a facility for a while, and when I say Dairy Queen style, I mean like they specialize in sort of, finger food style food, sandwiches, and that sort of stuff. Yeah, hot dogs, burgers, and also a very wide variety of ice cream treats and stuff. But it came under new ownership, I want to say in 2015 or 16. And the gentleman that bought it, he actually approached me whenever I was out and about painting if you guys have seen them, the chairs. Yeah, right. I was those 10-foot tall chairs. So I was actually painting one, and he just happened to be driving by and stopped. And I'd never met him before, but he stopped and said, "Hey, are you Andrew?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you that I bought The Spot, and I'm going to make it Flatwoods Monster themed." He said, "We're going to have." Cool. He said, "We're going to keep the name of The Spot." He said, "But we're going to change the colors. Instead of it was blue and red, we're going to be green and red. And we're going to have like UFO and alien inspired dishes and stuff." So like they have the signature saucer sandwiches, just all sorts of stuff like that. And they've decorated it like all inside and out with all sorts of, monster photos and articles and stuff like that. And as a matter of fact, they have like kind of a billboard with like, it looks like two people being chased by the Flatwoods monster, but their faces are cut out, and you can stick your face in there and get your picture taken. So yeah, they've embraced it wholeheartedly.
That's great, man.
Yeah, and I knew nothing about that. I'm being honest. I just wanted to ask because I noticed that Bob and I've done a few interviews with places who, like the Twin Lakes monster stuff. That's what some of these places embraced. They started having all these malts and sandwiches named after their local monsters. So I didn't ask last time you were on. It only kind of makes sense. I guess somebody would capitalize on that.
Yeah. Well, that's
cool.
Yeah, it's been great. I'd like to see it more. I mean, every place that has a menu or an item that they sell, I mean, there's enough room for a monster burger or a monster car wash option or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I totally think you're that spark, Andrew. I mean, seriously. And speaking of spark, do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about the museum or the visitor center there? I know originally you said it kind of started out as a little shelf with some collectibles, or you found some things in the back room, but now it's just turned into this huge tourist attraction.
Yeah. So in 2018, so for a little extra background info, I'm the executive director of the Braxton County Convention and Visitors Bureau and have been since 2013.
Wow.
So I don't know how many years that's been. It's been a nice chunk.
Going on 8 years, man.
Yeah. So anyway, we had a situation where we needed to move our office, and where we were before, we just happened to have a big glass, display case in the back that wasn't used for anything. So I moved it up front, dusted it off, and put a couple Flatwoods Monster things in it. And before I knew, people had been sending in all sorts of stuff to put on display. So we were embracing it a lot even then. So in 2018, we decided to move our offices, and my board was really dead set on us still continuing to have and maintain a visitors center. And we ended up settling on a space that was like overkill for what we needed. So I told my board, I said, okay, let's settle on this place if it can also act as the Flatwoods Monster Museum. And they said, sure. And then before you know it, 99% of all the foot traffic is for the Flatwoods Monster Museum. And then they're like, oh, it's a visitor center too? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Tell us about some of the visitors, man, where they come from. And
oh, well, I tell you what, it's probably it's right now it's like kind of 50-50 and has been. It's like 50-50 in-state, out of state, with the occasional like mix of, some international visitors that make the trek just for the Flatwoods Monster, which blows my mind every time. I'm still not used to it. Of course, it doesn't happen an incredible amount, but it happened enough that I decided to put some translations on our windows. So that way people would know that they got where they were going. It's a two-parter. It's to make sure people that visit here know they got where they're going, and to really make locals think like, oh, this is a big deal. Like there's Chinese writing on that window. So, it's a twofer. Right. But yeah, so we
all know that nobody's going to figure out that Chinese writing on there, okay?
Well, the bad thing is everything that's on there, I use Google Translate. So I hope it's right.
It's probably like eating cat,
Yeah, I was going to say, somebody's going to come in and go, you wash my shirt? Bring your laundry.
Maybe.
You never know. And don't send hate mail to the show.
So far, it's worked out.
But yeah, I was reading somewhere, but it sounds like the Asian population, I mean, they're kind of going gagas over the Flatwoods Monster.
Oh, well, they're ghosts and UFO, yeah, all day long.
I mean, they've modeled a lot of their monsters from video games and things.
Right.
Off of, Braxy, yeah.
Yes, yeah, a lot. And what's funny is I had a pretty early on visitor that came to the museum was a lady. I'm pretty sure her first name is pronounced Ray. Her last name starts with an M. I wish I could give her a shout out because if she'd hear it, she'd love it. Mm-hmm. But so this lady, lives in California. She's lived there at the time for 15 years, and before that, she lived in Japan. So she was very familiar with what the Flatwoods Monster looked like. But she said, at least as far as she knew, so she could have been wrong, but as far as she knew, the image of the Flatwoods Monster was very popular and recognizable in Japan, but not so much the story. So we actually ran an ad online as an online ad that I wrote all the copy in Japanese. For that, I was lucky enough. I've got a friend whose wife is Japanese, so she did some translating for me. But anyway, so we ran some ads in Japanese, and they caught her eye. So, like within a month, she booked a flight from California to Pittsburgh, rented a car, and came and spent a week in Braxton County, West Virginia. I don't even know if she'd ever been like east of the Mississippi.
Right.
So the first time she's here was spent in West Virginia. But anyway, so we talked for a long time and learned that, she didn't know about the Flatwoods Monster, the story, but that the image was very popular. So that's actually, it's kind of a good thing because, we respond so quickly to visual images that, you show somebody something visually that looks, that draws a memory, and then it draws them in. But yeah, so that's been actually, and she's almost taken it upon herself, this lady, to kind of become the ambassador for Braxy in Japan. Right. So she calls into like Japanese radio shows and talks to like editors of Japanese magazines and stuff like that. Like, you have to have the Flatwoods Monster in your show.
Cool.
So yeah, she's become an incredible asset. But yeah, so that is true. And then we had a group come. I want to say in 2018, a film crew come from Hong Kong, and shout out to my buddy Chuck who hosts that. And he did a show that aired in Hong Kong called there's America's Got Talent. It was America's Got Aliens.
Oh, wow.
So they did like the West Coast for their first season, and their second season they wanted to do East Coast. So they came and featured the Flatwoods Monster in one of their episodes, and that was going to be playing on. I think he told me that in Hong Kong, there's like 4 channels that everybody can get like for free. Like if you have an antenna, you can get them, and it was going to be playing on one of those 4 channels.
Oh, wow.
So like, if you lived in Hong Kong, there's a good chance you saw this episode. So that's huge for us and crazy. I feel like I've just took a big tangent. Not even sure what I was answering. So
no, it was about the fame that's invested in this. And
okay.
You mentioned off air, video games came along. So I have a list here that I looked up on. This one I did do some research because I actually went looking for these spots, and some people have put up little video cascades of them, all over, so I could actually go take a look. But The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, it shows up there. Space Harrier 2, Amagon, which I have no clue what that is. Strikers 1945, and of course Fallout 76. I saw somebody do a capture of that. Yeah, that was pretty cool. And then I guess there's an Easter egg out there too, in Everybody's Golf, a game that's I guess it shows up as like a little mascot or something in Everybody's Golf.
Everybody's Golf. I've never heard of that. You just taught me something. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, so it's listed as an Easter egg spot in there. So I guess you can see it in the background or wherever it's placed. But
there's like one more game on there that's not on your list. There was a mobile game that was created that's similar to Pokemon Go. That was called Ghostbusters World, and it's set up the same way.
No, really?
Yeah. The different challenges are based on your physical location, just like the Pokemon Go. Right. So the Ghostbusters World, one of the ghosts you can capture is in the shape of the Flatwoods Monster.
No way! I should know that. You'd think I'd know that. I guess
that's right. I thought you were a Ghostbuster.
Ghostbusters fan ever.
Dude, I played that game.
He was on the red carpet, man.
Look right there, Andrew.
Oh, right Proton Pack.
I have a Proton Pack. Yes.
I'm kind of disappointed in you right now, Dan.
I am too. I am disappointed in myself.
Wait,
as well.
I played the guts out of that game and could not get crap.
I
didn't do it, Elmer. I want to tell you why, because they had come out with so many different versions for the phone apps and all the. It was too much for me. The guys that can spend all day doing that, fine, but I just thought, no, I ain't doing it.
Look, I spent like a whole 2 weeks in Point Pleasant, and I never got crap. All right, I just kept getting the same ghost over and over. I just got tired of it.
Right. Well, you know what? I don't know if this was on purpose, but for a short while, I had Ghostbusters World on my phone, but I had to take it off because I ran out of room, and I didn't play it that much. Right. But I think I caught like 10 Flatwoods Monsters.
Wow.
You know what?
That's
just
crazy.
rub it in. Rub it in, okay? I just turned it
off. I mean, I could give you one. I'll give you my account. You can sign into it.
Oh, okay. I don't think it's available anymore.
That's another thing, a reason I don't do, because I ended up getting, Starfleet Command on here. And before I knew it, you're spending money buying dilithium, and then you're so far into it, you're like, you know what? I got to get back to my life. There's more happening out here than on my phone.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I mean, really, is there?
So well, probably not now, but I brought something to your attention, and you brought something to mine. Yeah. That's how it works, right?
Yeah.
What are you trying to say, Elmer?
What do you mean? What do you mean? What am I saying?
Nothing. Yeah.
I mean, your hair looks nice.
Check him out, man. His face is all red. All you see is his face.
I use conditioner on that one hair. right there.
That's
One little hair.
pretty. That's pretty.
Dude,
I
Elmer,
mean,
I don't know, man, but the Braxton County monster image on your shirt, dude, that looks freaky.
I like that.
Dude,
Now, especially
it
the
glows
light
And then
in
you
the
color.
got
dark.
your red face.
Oh, that's
glowing.
why. That's why we're seeing it. Glows
Yeah,
in the
man,
dark.
it glows in the dark.
Look,
That's
look.
cool.
Andrew didn't tell me this glowed in the
Now,
dark.
where did you
right?
get that shirt? Did you
Do
get
you
it
have
at
one
the
of those
museum?
shirts there, Andrew?
Yes, I got it at the museum along with, Braxy. But Andrew didn't tell me this shirt glowed in the dark. And one night, I'm going to bed and I'm seeing something glowing at me, and I'm just like, "What the heck?" And I was like, "Oh, Andrew didn't tell me this glowed in the dark."
No, I don't tell anybody unless they need to know it
Right.
in order to pick, make, if they're like, I don't know
See.
which one, I'll say that glows in the dark. But otherwise, I don't tell anybody because I love hearing stories like that. I hear those all the
Yes.
time. It's my favorite.
Yeah, I cried a little. Okay, I cried a little. Thanks to you. I
He
need
cried a
counseling.
little.
You always cry, Elmer. Hey, Elmer, for viewership, why don't you straighten that shirt out a little bit, man, so we can see
Yeah,
it all.
put it up there. Let everybody
Yeah,
see that.
Is that cool?
That's
awesome.
grandiose.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Well, we're gonna be RVing, my wife and I, Andrew. So I'll be seeing you probably this year because we've already talked. I don't know that we're taking the camper on one of the trips, but I have a feeling we are because she brought up West Virginia and I brought up your
Okay.
area. I said, well, if I'm down there, I'm going to go see Point Pleasant. I'm going to go see Braxton County. We're going to spend a day or two in each.
This seems awfully familiar.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, make sure to come in and say hi.
I will. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stand there first. I'm just going to walk in and look at you and see if you. I'll probably have a mask on. You'd be like, "Who is this creep standing in the store?"
Well, no. With the mask, that even makes it harder. But I never forget a face. But I'm so bad at remembering the context in which I recognize somebody. It could either be like I did their podcast, or I went to college with them. Or we had the same babysitter when we were kids. So you'll probably have to remind me.
You shouldn't have told me. So now I'm gonna screw with you when I come in there. I'm like, do you remember that hot babysitter we had when we were little?
Nobody would believe that, Dan, because you're old enough to be his dad. I mean,
I am. I'm way old enough to be his dad.
Just walk in with your headset on, man.
Yeah.
That'll do it. That'll do it.
Listen, I talked about using the hair coloring for men there. Elmer, you're starting to push me in that direction because that'll be the only thing to hide the gray.
Dan, you should
hey,
go red.
You like George Jones?
I do like George Jones.
Yeah, what's your favorite song?
What do you mean? What's my favorite songs?
Is it "I Don't Need Your Rocking Chair"?
No. No, I like "He Stopped Loving Her Today." That's one of my favorites.
See, there went the West Virginia in me. I'm sorry.
That's all good.
So
I'm actually from Ohio.
I bet a lot of people have had a little West Virginia in them.
Giggity.
Is that kind of like a little Irish in you? Or?
Well, if it's West Virginia, I'm not going to be mean. I don't want anybody hating me.
I'm from Ohio, so you can go right ahead. So
that's even worse.
No, it's not.
When you say that to a guy from Michigan, like, yeah, I'm from Ohio.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry that your butt hurt that we beat your butts every year in football. Ouch.
I could care less.
You need a Band-Aid?
I could care less. I don't. Bob's a Michigan fan, too.
Oh, Michigan.
Yeah, well, you don't count anyway. I mean, his nickname's Scrubs.
Poor Andrew. He's sitting over here. What does this got to do with the show? What does any of this have to do with this interview?
Actually, Andrew, I do have a question for you, man. Since the last show, we were kind of talking about, because Point Pleasant, Braxton County, West Virginia, and you guys are very close to one another, and two great monsters, man. I mean, you've got the Mothman of Point Pleasant, you've got the Flatwoods Monster of Braxton County. Is there any networking between you and Jeff, or anything, or any talks about you guys doing any festivals or being a part of his festival, or anything going on at all?
Oh yeah, Jeff has been incredibly helpful and supportive for us. As a matter of fact, you could almost say that Jeff's responsible for there being a Flatwoods Monster Museum.
Oh wow!
Yeah, my wife and I mean, like a legit one. I mean, I know I told you about that display that I had at my office before, but before we launched in October 2018, probably would have been maybe that spring of 2018. My wife and kids went to Point Pleasant and spent the weekend there, and Mothmanning and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there at the museum, Jeff happened to be there,
Mm-hmm.
and so we talked for a little bit. And he said, "Boy, you really need to get a Flatwoods Monster Museum up in that area." And actually, my response was, "I don't think anybody would care about that."
Really?
Or like enough to make it worthwhile, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
Little did you know. Yeah.
Yeah, he said no. He said, "I'm telling you." He said, "We have people in here every day." He said, "They seem to be just as interested in the Flatwoods Monster as Mothman." He said, "You need to do it." So that was encouragement enough, because he's been doing it for so long
Right.
that if it wasn't worthwhile, he wouldn't have brought it up. And then on top of that, in 2019, he invited me up to talk about the Flatwoods Monster at the what's the theater there, Elmer?
The State Theater.
The State Theater, right? And present there. And boy, like I've done stuff like this. I've done small presentations and
Right.
things like that. But looking out on like 300 people that are all choosing to sit in a very hot theater where we're all sweating, we probably all stink, and they're in there anyway. I was very nervous. And I think I had an hour. I had an hour-long block, and I made myself notes and like made sure I hit this point, hit this point, hit this point. And by the time I'd gotten through like the bulk of like the story, like the main story, I remember feeling like, okay, I got through that. What time is it? And it's like, oh, I've been up here for 4 minutes.
Oh man.
So, yeah.
But when you ask for questions, anybody, that's what's time consuming. Everyone's questions.
Well, amazingly, I was able to. I think I was able to talk for almost 40 minutes, and then took questions. So
Right.
It wasn't bad, but boy, did I get scared at first. But yeah, all that to say that yes, it seems like anytime Jeff can include us in something, he tries to.
Right.
And if a TV show stops by there, he'll say, "Hey, you're right next to Braxton County. Go check them out."
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
That's cool.
and I would say that I do everything I can for him, but let's be honest, I don't really have to, but I would if it needed to be. But
Right.
but yeah, so he's been incredibly helpful, and I don't mind riding his coattails, not one bit.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And folks, I do recommend you guys taking a nice vacation, or if you guys are planning on something to do, like, hey, what the hell should we do, for this vacation? Why don't you just head down south and go to West Virginia, and you can stop first at Point Pleasant and see the Mothman Museum and stay there for a night or two. And then you can go down to Braxton County and see Andrew and stop by the Flatwoods Museum there.
Sit in the chairs, get your picture in the chairs.
Make a nice little vacation. I think it would be so cool just to do that little road trip. And especially if you want to go down to the Mothman Festival. Are they doing a festival this year, Elmer? Or is that
they're
a
planning on it. It's supposed to be the 20-year anniversary of it.
But
with the Rona going on, it's hard to tell yet.
Right. But definitely, support these places and these communities, like Andrew. He puts his heart and soul into this, and really, check it out. Check out the museum. Stop down and talk to them. Check out some of the local dives and restaurants. And what was the name of the one restaurant again? The themed restaurant, Andrew? I'm sorry.
The Spot.
The Spot. The Dairy Queen, little spot. That would be so cool, and that's something I would love to do, and I'm probably going to do here sometime in the next year or two. I definitely got to stop down and see my broski Elmer there and give him a hard time, and yeah, like Dan said, make a trip.
TNT, what I want to do.
You're gonna do what?
I'm gonna drop you off in the TNT area. What I want to do.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, and you mentioned the Mothman Festival. We're actually, I don't have all the details yet, but we're actually planning on having a little event in Sutton, where our museum is located.
Right.
Actually, this past year in 2019, what year is it again? 2020. Oh gosh. Oh Lord, what a year. Anyway, in 2020, it dawned on me that September 12th, the day the sighting of the Flatwoods Monster took place, was actually going to fall on a Saturday. and I just couldn't let that go to waste.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's perfect
Do
timing.
something
Yeah.
about it, absolutely.
so we partnered with the Elk Theater. That's a historic one screen theater that's just up the road from us, and had a not a monster movie fest, because you're not supposed to have festivals in 2020, so it was not a monster movie fest.
Correct.
And so we showed some Flatwoods Monster short films, and had some vendors set up at like 10 feet apart, and had the vendor area set up to where there was a maximum of 20 people that could come in at any time. We did it all in the up and up. We worked with the local health department. So we're planning on at least doing something of similar scope this year, which the nearest Saturday, it's going to fall on September 11th this year. So at least to some degree, we're going to be showing movies and having vendors. We're hoping. Well, I probably shouldn't say anything because I probably need to double confirm. But we should be premiering a movie. So if anybody's interested in that, be sure to follow us on Facebook at Flatwoods Monster Museum, because all the details will be on there if you're interested in that.
Right, that's awesome, man. That's really cool.
I would tell everybody, and maybe you throw it around to people there. I mean, I don't know what this movie's going to be. I'm sure it's something in connection with.
It's related.
Right.
Fancy.
I'm surprised after watching the movie Signs, which was a real kind of a letdown, I think, at the end. But then again, maybe not. But the whole thing of it is that if they were to put together something very similar to that, with that fright aspect to this story, and making it just so surreal and frightening, and then at the end, kind of have a little follow up about what took place years later. I would love to see like a Hollywood version of that done, but done in such a fashion where it's not over the top, scaring you out of your underwear, but
right.
Am I making sense? Like Barney Betty Hill type of thing? Because when I watched that as a kid, and I've rewatched it since, that's still like Elmer's talking about, being out in the middle of nowhere again. I've done that too, and I've had to get out and take a break. And you're standing there out in the middle of the room, and you're thinking, "Yeah, I'm with you, Elmer." I'm thinking, "This is where I disappear. Something's going to show up," and that movie frightened the hell out of me. So I could see the same thing, and really gripping audiences, because I think this is just a great story. It's a great story.
It absolutely is,
and it happened.
Right.
A couple of quick things before we end the show, Andrew. If there's somebody who wants to learn more about the Flatwoods Monster, where would you point them to? What books would you suggest for them?
Books? Well, we talked about Frank Ficino's book, which I believe is simply called The Braxton County Monster, if I'm not mistaken. But it's by Frank Ficino. Sure. That is probably one of the most exhaustive works. Right. But I tell you what, a book that we sell a whole lot of in our museum is called Monsters of West Virginia. And it's just a great catch-all for like everything spooky in West Virginia, and kind of gives you a good snapshot of each. Right. I'm sure they sell them at the Mothman Museum as well, because I believe Mothman's on the cover.
They do.
Okay. So that's a great, I mean, if you want to get a little bit of everything, that's great. And it's only like $12. That's a great one. Right. George Dudding did a relatively short book that's a standalone book on the Flatwoods Monster. And if you are familiar with George Dudding, he's very prolific. It's one of his like 60 books that he's written. But if you want a standalone book that's also really inexpensive, Dudding's Flatwoods Monster book is great. And finally, our buddy Dave Spinks just recently released a Real UFOs of West Virginia, I believe it's called. And it has specifically UFO cases that take place in West Virginia, and like chapters dedicated to them. And of course, he has the Flatwoods Monster in that as well.
Sweet.
Yeah, we've had David on. Remember, we had David on about a year or two ago. Good guy.
Okay.
Yep. What about documentaries or shows? Anything you want to point them out to?
Well, definitely Small Town Monsters, Flatwoods Monster a legacy of fear. I mean, if you only got 45 minutes, I don't know a better way to soak up the story.
Great show, absolutely. Did a good
Yeah.
job of that.
So that's the main one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great, man. Where can people get a hold of you or get in touch with you, or do you have a website or Facebook page or anything like that you want to give a shout out to, Andrew?
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned before, the Flatwoods Monster Museum has, I wouldn't say all the social medias, but a lot of them. So Flatwoods, at Flatwoods Monster Museum on Facebook, at Monster Museum on Twitter, at Flatwoods Monster Museum on Instagram. Follow those. And then, of course, our county's website, braxtonwv.org. It has, if you want to learn anything that you might, as a visitor, might want to know about Braxton County, you'll find it on there. But specifically, if you were to go to braxie.com, BRAXXIE.com, that takes you to our main page that's related to the Flatwoods Monster on our primary website. And there you should be able to be linked to just about anything you would want to know about the Flatwoods Monster and how it relates to our area.
There you have it, folks. Plenty of research for you guys to get into, man. And I tell you what, I mean, the story is it's phenomenal. I mean, it's great. I mean, especially
Still gripping.
Love's documentary does such a job, such a great job with everything. And I mean, we've kind of fallen in love with the story. And Andrew, what's your thoughts, man? I mean, do you think there's something to it? I mean, do you think that this was actually, some phenomena from outer space, or do you think this is just,
Yeah, you kind of you're along with what Freddie was saying, that maybe he thinks it's just a government thing,
Do you have an actual theory or a feeling towards it?
I don't really have a theory so much, but what I will say is, knowing Freddie and knowing the reputation that him and his family have in the area, that I believe wholeheartedly that they saw something that they could not explain, and that affected them, mentally and physically. What it was, who's to say? I don't necessarily have a theory in that. I'll tell you what I want it to be. I want it to be a scary 10-foot tall monster from outer space.
I think we all do, man.
Is what I want. I don't know if that's what it is.
That's what he wants. That's what he wants.
Yeah.
So it can come back anytime. I didn't bring up the whole owl thing, and I want the audience to know why. If anybody asks, after they see this, why I didn't bring it up, because I just found that the most ridiculous explanation ever. And like with most of these people that try to put some sort of sensibility or science skepticism, pseudo-skepticism in there, reading up on some of the people relaying that, it's like, no, listen, this is a family who lives out in this area, have lived there their whole lives. I am sure, folks, that they know the difference between an owl and the thing that they saw. I have no doubt whatsoever. You've lived down there. Elmer, you've been out there. You've probably seen owls and birds. I mean, you know the difference. And I don't believe for a second that that's a viable explanation. That's why I didn't bring it up tonight. I didn't feel it was respected enough to have it even brought up.
Right.
Well, you know what though, I've looked into that theory, and it's interesting. But I don't subscribe. I don't subscribe to it either. But it's a fascinating logic, and it makes a certain kind of sense.
It does.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to it myself either.
Right. Bob and I would do the same thing. I'm not saying that it wasn't done in a way that like it shouldn't have been done, because that's the first thing any of us doing paranormal investigating will do, is look for the most viable possibility. And we know that some people can witness something, but I don't know, man. I'm with you on that, but like I said, I guess I came off pretty hard on that. But again, because I've had it happen so often with a lot of different things that I've looked into, and people who live in the area and know nature and know wildlife, as these kids are going to. These are kids that played outdoors. They're in the 50s. So if you really want to put the model in place, I guarantee these kids at some point in time camping in their young life in the 50s, without all the modern things that are going on now, had seen the frickin' owl. That was just my point of view.
Right.
And to say that, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. But what I was going to say is, just the other day, I was driving a back road 2-lane, going to my father's house with my family, and I actually saw an owl pick up a rabbit on the side of the road and fly off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't look like a Flatwoods monster to me. I know that.
No, right. That's my point. And gas coming out. I mean,
Birds of prey
it's
sure,
just
but no
right.
flatwoods.
That's and they're immense. Those owls are bigger than people give them credit
Yeah.
for. They're large creatures. But thanks for being on the show, Andrew.
Andrew, thanks for coming back.
Thank you all for having me.
Love to have you on again, man. It's always great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for putting up with the train wreck.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Andrew. I'll be up shortly.
All right, we'll see you then, Elmer.
Again, everybody, I want to thank our sponsors and our friends here of the program. I Want to Believe, SMP Paranormal Show, and all the other great podcasts we have that are aired on the network that we're seen on here. We are also heard on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Unrestricted Radio. Do yourself a favor and download the app. There are a lot of great DJs and people playing some outstanding music and a lot of things going on over there.
Shows on that network.
A lot of great shows over there. HendersonCastle.com. Gun Barrel Coffee, my good friends over there providing great coffee. Proceeds go to help out a lot of veteran deals to help out vets. It's owned by vets. The coffee is roasted by a veteran. This is a family tradition, but it's gunbarrelcoffee.com. They got all sorts of swag. They got hot sauces now, popcorn, T-shirts. It's all sorts of great stuff over there. It's really cool. Southern Michigan Paranormal Night Stalkers. That's what would be Bob and I. And Live Radio 1 on Facebook. We're still kind of mothership a lot of things over there that we play out there as well. The Michigan 69 Podcast Network, folks. Just please come over and give us a look. We're going to be adding some other folks on here who are already currently doing some podcasts. We're going to have some fun guests coming up. Andrew, of course, starting it off with a fast race for being with us on this episode. I can't say enough about that. And thanks for being here. And Bob, thanks for having me on with you guys, you and Elmer, as always.
All right, thanks for listening to I Want to Believe Radio. So until next time, Elmer.
And keep your eyes to the skies. And what was that, Braxy? Oh, Braxy wants to say something too. Go to the spot. He got some good chili dogs and some other cool stuff, all right?
Awesome. Check out the spot down there in Braxton County, guys.
Go to the spot. Thanks, Andrew.
All right, have a good night, folks. Thank you very much, guys. Good night.
And that kid's